Marky Worthington Podcast all day.
All day.
Dream by night.
Don't buy me a drink. Just give me $10.
Oh, dude, you look sweet. Yeah, you got a big beard, dude.
Go down to the strip club with your floppy disk and turn it into a hard drive.
Yeah, right. Thrown out by Big Tony.
We're here to name names and make people feel more ashamed for shit that they're not proud of.
Me and my best friend, Marky Worthington.
Whatever it is.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the Marky Worthington Comedy Podcast. This is episode 130 with... first time on the show. Had a list of comedians in Canberra that I wanted to have on the show when I first started this, and finally I'm ticking that box with today's guest, Tom Gibson.
Hey Marky, I've been waiting 129 episodes to get the call, so
Yeah.
happy to be here.
It turns out all I needed to do was ask.
Yeah, funny that, eh?
I didn't put. There you go for anyone out there that believes in the planets aligning. I didn't need to put into the universe. I just needed to actually ask.
Yeah.
Maybe I needed to do both.
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah.
So I've been kicking around the comedy scene. That's such a wanky way of saying it, but I've been doing stand-up comedy for just over 7 years now. And when I first started, there's a few comedians that are still in the scene now, and you are one of them. How long have you been doing comedy?
My first gig was in, I believe, 2005.
Right.
So gives you an indication of my age and my lack of success in comedy. It was raw comedy. At that time, that was pretty much the only comedy in Canberra. And I'd always loved it. So comedy that is, I always watched it. And I think it was Boxing Day, and I just signed up for raw comedy. And I'd seen a live comedy gig once, probably 7 or 8 years before that. But I'd never really gone to comedy, but I just signed up and then, had to write a set, do raw comedy.
Whoa.
And, that was good. That was my start. But
Nice.
That was all there was at that time.
Do you remember your first set?
I do.
And so it was 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
What sort of stuff did you do?
Well, actually, I would never do any of those jokes now.
Yeah.
But it was structured pretty well for a first set. Like I probably had a little bit of an intuitive understanding how to structure a set. So I started off with some short jokes to get laughs up front, and then I built up into longer ones, and I finished with a bit of a half story joke that had a bit of a payoff at the end and had an act out in it. So it's not far off how I would structure a set, 5 minute set now. But yeah, so some of the jokes, there were jokes about Guy Sebastian and
Hot topic at the time.
well, it was making fun of him. So one of the jokes was how Guy Sebastian, what it was he'd performed at the opening ceremony of the Melbourne Deaf Olympics. And I was like, if that's not a clue about what people think of your music, I'm not sure what to tell you, Guy, kind of thing. And and there was just sort of stuff along that. Nothing too deep, nothing too personal, but they're kind of short and sharp mostly.
It's the opening for the deaf crowd is literally like saying like you look better than you sound.
Exactly right. And then my next bit was like at the Blind Olympics, I probably asked Casey Donovan to sing, and now I wouldn't do a joke. That's mean. But what I was just doing is flipping it. You know,
you got to say it'd be Susan Boyle these days.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, at the time,
Casey Donovan was around that era.
It was around that era, and she was also like a Australian Idol style.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't ever listen to those things, but to me they were comparable in terms of where they were. And so in Guy Sebastian, it was can see but can't hear, and the other one was hear but not see. So Casey Donovan has a nice voice, whatever. But
speak no evil, and you've got all the
that's right. But that's actually a good indication of like evolution of style of jokes. So to me, that twist of the joke. So you take the one scenario, that's the observation, you twist it to get a second joke out of it. I would still do that, but I wouldn't put someone at the butt of the joke like Casey. Right. That's too mean for me now. But at the time, I was probably too caught up on the idea of, here's a second gag.
You just throw yourself under the bus now. You say like me. Yeah. That's what,
right.
you'd make it self-deprecating. So you never really listened to any of the Australian Idol stuff?
Nah.
And neither did the people at the Olympics.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
See, 7 years of comedy, I can just feed off that.
Yeah.
You know?
I was like, they didn't have to sound check. They didn't
You know,
have
when
to
you
plug in
first
their
said
instruments.
that, I thought of that joke and I was waiting till the end to say it. It's also about timing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Didn't have to do
You're
sound
an
check.
expert, mate.
I just stepped over what you're about to say to tell you that.
If I only had a time machine, I'd go back and fit that into my set.
Yep. And I'd have to go back and tell you not to do it because there's a flow-on effect in 20 years' time where you create Skynet because of
That's
that
right.
bit.
Yeah.
So actually, never spoke to you about this before, but that's interesting because the first time I ever did a set was at Smith 7 years ago, or just over 7 years ago, and I had the same structure. So I've been stealing from you before I met you, but it was the same thing. I had a couple of shorter bits at the start, but I had this story at the end with an act out, and it was on the 5th of November, so it was just after Melbourne Cup. That year it fell. I think it was on the Sunday after the Melbourne Cup, that Tuesday or whatever. No, that couldn't have worked. The Melbourne Cup was gonna be on the Tuesday. It was Sunday at Smith's.
Okay.
There we go. Just Rain Man, the fucking calendar from 2017. And I forgot a couple of the short ones at the start, or the order. That hasn't changed. I still fucked up that.
Yeah.
But I had this bit at the end I was going to close with, which was my fallback. Like, if all else fails, I'll just run that a bit longer.
Yeah, okay.
And it was a whole act out about the saying, never look a gift horse in the mouth.
Okay.
Or whatever, in the teeth or whatever the fuck.
That's right.
Is it mouth or teeth?
Mouth.
Mouth. Good. Excellent. The whole bit was just like an exaggeration on how bad does the gift horse have to be before you start questioning why you're getting it.
Yeah.
And then talking about just being like, thank you so much for this gift horse. I'm actually just going to enter it straight in the Melbourne Cup because I'm so confident that like you've given me this thing that can't be bad.
Yeah.
It was a whole act out bit, and about dragging like a horse into the Melbourne Cup that was like not suitable to race and all this shit. So I just played that out. And here's the funny thing. I bombed at the start and then picked it up at the end with the act out and the bit. So that was also pretty difficult to do. In my experience, it's usually like the other way around. You can usually get them at the top, especially if you've got a good MC, and then just fucking eat it at the end.
It's hard to pick it up. It's easy to drop off. It's easy to have a good start and then fall away. Yeah.
I had someone came and recorded it, and they were like, I want to like make sure I want to I've got this new phone. It's like super great camera and all this shit. Get to the end of it, and I'm like, hey, thanks for that. Just send me that set and we're good. He goes, I forgot to, so what happened was I wanted to get the best quality, so I set it up to like full HD recording, and halfway through your set, the memory card filled up and it didn't get the second half.
Yep.
And so
I got the worst bit.
I got it sent to me, and literally right as I started to go like, all right, so you guys like Melbourne Cup? And it just cut off. And that's exactly when it started to turn around.
Well, sometimes it's good not to have the evidence, because in your head now that no one can ever dispute that the end of your set went really well. If you had the evidence, you might after time go, maybe it wasn't as good as I remembered. That happens to me. That's the only reason I say that.
My set was the gift horse.
Yeah.
So that's our first times. But I also owe to you my first ever corporate gig.
Oh, you set that up.
Yeah, I know, but like I wouldn't have sold myself without you tacked on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm the fries. No one's going to come in and just get the fries. They're going to go, cool, if you make this a meal, we'll go for it. I'm not paying extra for the fries, but if you're going to throw them in anyway, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to sell it. But Yeah, so first ever corporate gig. I've done gigs since then that weren't like corporate gigs, but they were like charity gigs or corporate style gigs.
Yep.
Different beast. Hey, what's your experience with corporate gigs?
Yeah, well, I've been doing them for a long time because when I started, there weren't very many comedians around. So I probably got opportunities ahead of my ability level. And the first one I did, and this is a thing, I hear a lot of people talk about corporates and get excited about them, probably because they pay way, way more than pretty much any other gig. But they're actually not great. They're not great for comedy. And most of the time, they don't work very well. But, you know, I was like that when I was pretty new, and I'd started to have like some pretty good 5 and 10 minute sets. And a guy who came to a bit of comedy saw it, and he said, well, I've got to get you for this event. You just do that set that you did at whatever club. And I was like, Sweeto Burrito. And it was, I think it was like $500 they were paying me, which at the time was probably the first time I'd ever got paid for comedy. So I was like, great, this is validation, you know. I'm making it. The career is beginning. Little bit I know. But what it ended up being at the ANU, and it was I can't remember what the event was, but it was the audience, and this is a key thing about corporates and comedy in general. The audience makes or breaks it, right? And comedy clubs are full of an audience that have chosen to come and watch comedy. And they buy a ticket, and they're there, and that's their primary purpose. Corporates, they're usually there for something totally different, and someone's dropped comedy on them. And the same jokes, the same comedian will have a totally different, it'll sound totally different. You sometimes you get the best comedian in the universe doing the best set in the universe. And you've probably heard plenty of pros talk about this, where it just doesn't work. And when you're at the start of your comedy career and you don't have all the tools, it's even harder. So the audience on this night were lots of people from other countries. It was something that was the bond. That was why they were there. So there was, I sat at a table with a group of Indian people. There were Europeans, there were Africans. And at that time, my set was pretty, it revolved a lot around Australian knowledge. So I was referring to stuff like Ivan Milat or historical figures that I would expect most Australians who grew up here to know. They didn't know them. And not only that, I was on after a concert pianist who went for about 30 minutes and probably 20 minutes too long. So there was no mood in the room. No one was interested. Probably most of them didn't even want to go to the event. And they're like, hey, here's a comedian that you've never heard of that is really raw. And I got up and died a horrible death and hated it. And went home. I was like, comedy's the worst. But it was a good learning experience. And so I sort of, over the years, I've developed a ability to make corporates work a lot better, and a lot of it is prior to the night and talking to whoever's trying to sign you up, because they're usually the event manager, the organizer, and they've had the idea, and it's only one component of the night for them, and they're like, oh, we'll get the band, we'll do the awards or whatever it is, we've got the catering, and we'll get a comedian, and they've given it 2 minutes of thought. And so the key is to dictate the terms to them, because at the start I was too shy or polite or whatever to be forceful and inexperienced to be forceful. But after a while I'm like, no, they need my help. I know comedy. They know the event. I know comedy. So I'll go, what's the room look like? And I'll go, the timing really counts. People can't be eating food halfway through. I can't go on after this. I can't go on before that. Not too late, not too early. And sometimes venue, the whole thing. Sometimes they'll say, can you do 40 minutes? I go, no way in the universe will anyone listen for 40 minutes at an awards night or a footy club function or a Christmas party. No way in the world. Short, sharp. And so then I can reduce some of those variables and increase the likelihood that it's going to work.
Yep.
But it takes time to learn that stuff and have the confidence to say it. And also sometimes I just don't do it. I'm like, that will never work. And we all like to make heaps of coin, but to me, I enjoy comedy, and I don't enjoy, there's an element where you go, well, if they pay me heaps of bucks, I can muscle through half an hour of pretty much anything. But I don't know. I'm not so much a slave to that I sometimes go, this won't work, or I quote an outrageous price that I know they'll never do, and don't do the gig.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I've done heaps of them, and most of the time I feel like over the last 5 to 10 years that I have brought the base up so I don't bomb. However, I had a terrible one just before Christmas this year, and it was diabolical.
Even after all these years.
Even I couldn't fix it. I knew
20 years into comedy.
Yeah, and the signs were there. I knew that it wasn't probably going to be great, and then when I got there, I was like, this definitely isn't going to be great. But I'm like, come on, Tom, you've got experience.
You pulled yourself aside like a fucking coach.
Yeah. And
like a halftime coach speech in the bathroom
it
in
was
the mirror.
Pre-game. It was pre-game, and I was like,
like
mate,
in Pulp Fiction, where Travolta's just like go out, say goodnight, say have a good night, goes out. Mia Wallace is OD'd.
Well, because the thing is as well, like you've got to adapt to the room. That's another thing. You can't just bring the jokes that you would normally tell.
Plus, you're a high energy comedian. Imagine just coming out to a dead room and just trying to breathe life into it.
Well, that's right. And I mean, I've heard Dimitri Martin, who's a deadpan one-liner comedian, talk about getting paid $100,000 to go to Britain to do a corporate and having no laughs for the entire set and then flying home. And if you don't tune into that, he's got no energy. That's his style. He's funny and he's got good jokes, but no one went for it.
That's fucking wild. So one night two things from that. Thank you first of all for living through all the bullshit, passing that information on to me so that I don't have to as much.
That's kind of I feel like that's my contribution to Australian comedy.
Yeah, and it's not much, but it's honest work. And like, I mean, me, like my contribution, which you've given me, is not much. As in, if you could, the good thing is you can use that same contribution to another comedian. It's not a one-off thing.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like knowledge sharing. Like if you have an apple and I have an apple and we switch, we both still have one apple, but you can then, knowledge is like, if we share knowledge now, we both have two knowledges.
Yeah, that's very deep, mate.
I stole it from the New Inventors from ABC.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a philosophy podcast. I didn't even realize.
Yeah. It's philosophy if it was run by Charles Darwin with his beard. So I'm trying to think of historical figures with beard. Yeah. No, so I stole that from that show. They used to end every show with like a saying.
Yeah, okay.
And that one stuck with me for some reason. Only he said it better. Like he didn't say two knowledges.
Yeah. I was wondering about that bit.
Yeah, that was a little more polished even for the ABC. But yeah, so first of all, thanks for that. Because I feel like you definitely you shielded me from what potentially could be a shit first experience, which would then traumatize me to doing corporates in the future. So as it stands right now, I don't have a bad association with corporates.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm already still more confident than I would have been going into them, and that's half the battle won.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think part of it as well is just having another person.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you rock up on your own and you feel like you are you've never had a friend in your whole life.
Sure.
Whereas if you go with someone else, at least you're sharing the burden and the responsibility, and at the very least, if you both stink, you can talk about it.
Yeah. The whole another quote's that shared joy is double joy. Shared sorrow is half sorrow.
So deep.
Yep. One sorrow, it becomes half sorrow. Yeah. Two joy.
Yeah.
Half sorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
So one thing I like to do, even not corporates in so much, but just talking about going with someone else. If I did a mic up in fucking Wollongong, which was like probably the worst gig I've ever done.
Okay.
One thing I like to do though, especially if you're by yourself, is to find, like, if I make friends with someone there, like one of the other performers or whatever, I'll be looking at that person, and I've got like a
in the crowd when you perform.
Yeah, like a touch point, like a single person, or it might be just whoever is smiling. Like if I can make one person laugh, that person will get me through the set.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
If no one's laughing, then you're fucked. But Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing was so what I was saying before is one night at Beso, I booked a Australian comedian, like a bigger Australian comedian management representation, up there. And what management companies usually like to do is maximize time. So what they do is they'll go, hey, we just booked this comedian to get paid on a retainer to go to Canberra to do a gig. So while he's there, we're going to reach out and see if we can get him to do a corporate the night before, fly him in the day early.
Yeah.
He'll do a corporate the night before and we'll double our
Yep.
thing for one set of flights. And hotels usually a lot cheaper than flights, right?
Yep.
Especially the ones they put fucking people up in when you go onto a gig. Problem was, this comedian comes in to Beso, which is a comedy club vibe,
Yep.
still in fucking shock from the night before.
Oh, really?
Literally comes in, first thing that they say to me is just like, g'day, yeah, had a corporate last night. Yeah, it fucked me up.
Oh, really? That bad?
Literally the day after. And then had to do a Beso gig, which was a good gig. The Beso one was fine. But it just goes to show, like you said before, you like comedy and the money, take it or leave it. Like, you want the money.
Well, yeah.
Remember when you just said to me you want money and you don't care about what anyone else thinks? Remember when you just said that?
Yeah, I just said that. No, but I mean, that's interesting because I would love a comedy club gig after a bad corporate. That would be a way to go, let's cleanse it. Let's get rid of it. Let's go back to what I actually love.
Don't go home still hit. That's another saying.
Actually, yeah. Speaking of sort of that exact scenario, when I was pretty new still, so Emma Parsonson, who's still kicking around Canberra telling jokes, he and I started on the exact same night in Raw Comedy. And then Jay Sullivan. Do you ever meet Jay?
I worked with him, yep.
Yeah. So Jay Sullivan was one
once. Of everyone was like, holy fuck.
Yeah. He's one of the most natural and he's such a great comedian. He's one of the guys, if you're a comedy fan, you think of jokes, you can remember jokes you've heard. His jokes pop into my head more in daily life than pro comedians. He just had, and there were some periods where I was like, this guy might be the best form out of any comedian in Australia. And that's no exaggeration. He was on fire.
One of the most nervous fucking dudes I've ever seen, and then goes up and crushes. That's my experience.
Yeah.
Someone like that has never seen him perform before.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it prior to his stage.
That's right. That was his. He actually tinkered with his stage persona. At the start, he hadn't found what became his best one, and even after he did, so his best one, like, he'd always suit up and he was loud, and he'd yell, and it was full, all senses on max, full volume, and it was really compelling. But he still sometimes tinkered with trying to be a bit more laid back, a bit more whimsical. And if your jokes are good, it's still funny. But that loud one that blasted, that was, in my opinion, where his best stuff was, and it was certainly my favourite. Anyway, I think it was through him. He teed up a gig with an IT company, Christmas party, and Jay, Emma, and I were supposed to perform, and they wanted us to do a quick session teaching comedy so that one or two of the workers could get up and do it. Now if someone told me that idea, I'd say that is the worst idea I've ever heard, and I'm not going anywhere near it. At the time, I had some serious doubts, but the other guys were keen, so I thought, I'll do it. Anyway, so these guys had dinner. So you can imagine an IT business going out for a Christmas party. They had dinner, and then three randos get up.
Imagine it. I've been it.
I know. I'm making this relevant for you. But then three randos get up and do comedy. So already three comedians doing comedy at a Christmas party. That's a dumb idea already. Have one. You don't. It's not a comedy night. So having three won't work. And then the idea of, you can't just teach comedy that quickly. Even if someone had ability in that group, they'd need time to construct a set and go up. There was no way it was going to work. And it didn't. And so our sets didn't work very well. I particularly remember some of my jokes tanking. Then the no one was that interested in getting up to do it. Then it tanked. Anyway, the whole thing was horrendous. So we left, and I was like, that is the worst thing I've ever done. And so and the reason I bring this story up out of my list of many, many bad corporates is because I tried to cleanse it with, I was like, I need to go to a club. Because at that point, I was doing pretty well in the clubs relative to my level. And we went to, I can't remember the name of the place. It was the last night, it was shutting down, and it was a music venue. And it was a heavy metal music venue. And I don't know how we stumbled upon it. And I was like, I'm going to do comedy here. It's a mic, there's a crowd, they're pumped. And somehow I convinced the manager to let me do 5. And
Where was it's in Canberra?
in Canberra. I don't know how we stumbled upon it. And it was my way of going, I'll fix that first one by having a good second one. What I actually did is compound the first one by having a diabolical second one. So I started talking, and all these guys who are here for a heavy metal. So
Was
I
in the
in between
city or
acts.
where?
Yeah. I can't remember. And it was a short-lived venue.
Yeah.
And so I started telling some jokes, and they were like, what are you doing? It wasn't like they were hating it. They were just baffled. And then I was like, I'm baffled. What am I doing? And then in the end, I just stopped talking and just walked off. And so that was probably the most bad comedy I've ever compressed into one night. I just hit all failure, or any types of, all the ways to fail in comedy. I did them all in the one night. It was amazing.
Holy fuck! You did the round the world of the comedy fuck ups.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
It was
How long were you been doing comedy by this point?
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, in those days, it wasn't like now. If you start comedy and you've got all the open mics, you can get a lot of gigs in a year.
Yeah.
My first year, I did 2. I did Raw Comedy, The Heat in Canberra. I won that, went to Sydney. In those days, you didn't go straight to the
Melbourne,
final.
yeah.
You went to the New South Wales semi-final.
Right.
And I did that, and I didn't get past it.
Right.
I think objectively, I was a bit unlucky not to get by, but it wasn't great. So, okay.
Do you remember who won that year?
The whole thing?
Yeah.
I think it might have been Hannah Gatsby.
Oh, really?
Yep, I think so. And she was great. And if you can watch her Raw Comedy set now, and it's still pretty bloody good.
Fuck.
Yeah, and so I didn't do anything till Raw Comedy the next year. So I had 12 months off. So and I did another pretty good set.
Yeah.
And then I probably did 2 or 3. So I've probably done 5 in the first 2 years. The third year, I think I went to Melbourne in my third year to the festival, which was another crazy story. But when I set foot in Melbourne to do a run of 20 shows in a split show, I had done 11 gigs over 3 years. Prior to that, only one of the length of the festival set. So
How long was the
wasn't-
festival set? 20 minutes or something?
Yeah, I think I did 30. Yeah. Which was madness in itself. But
Was it a split bill with someone else?
split bill?
Who were
yeah.
you with?
A guy called James Lieutenant, who was a quirky one-linery guy.
Fucking wild name.
Yeah, he was a funny dude. And he, at that time, there was a stand-up show on Fox, or like when you know, pay TV was new. That what's his name? Cameron. I'm still kicking around. I can't think of his name.
Cam Knight?
Cam Knight hosted a stand. When Cam Knight was new, hosted a stand-up show. James had been on it. He was good on it. He had genuine fans, but he was still new, and he hadn't always worked out what his best jokes were and what his worst were. And he was good over 10, and he was stretching himself to 30. I was a bit the same with less experience. And he had a split show with a guy who then got called up to the Comedy Zone at the last minute and had to leave. So in January, February, prior to March, going to the festival, he was down a guy. So he asked me to fill in. And at the last minute, I was like, yep. And I had, probably at the time he asked me, I had done 9 gigs ever. And so I crammed in 2 more, went to Melbourne, 21 in a row at half an hour. So bazillion times more comedy minutes. Yeah, so that was mayhem.
Whoa, that's insane.
Yeah, but it actually got me good because people love the idea of the Melbourne Comedy Festival and other comedy festivals, but what they don't realise is there's 600 shows and 90% of the tickets are sold to Dave Hughes and Ursula Carlson and the big names.
Yeah.
And then the remaining, however many, are split between the other 570 acts.
Yeah.
And we were in Backpackers Hotel near the Vic Market, so out of the hub, miles away. It wasn't a great room. And no one... Our best night, we probably had 30 or 40. lots of nights we had. Well, I think we had to drop 2 nights where we didn't get any tickets, and I performed to 3 people once. But what it did is it hardened me up. It got me tough.
Yeah.
And I got resilient and I got more stage time. And then when I came back to Canberra, I had improved. I don't think my jokes had improved, but my resilience, my mental fortitude had improved. And that
Mentality?
yeah, that helped me a lot. But it was a pretty hard month.
Fuck. Dude, we're chatting about Raw before, and we'll take a break after this. I'll close on this bit. You guys are being a good crowd. I'll wrap up on this one, and then we'll be back again after the break. All right, I'll leave you guys on this one. That fucking tell, like when someone gets the light, they want to tell the MC that they've seen the light, but they don't want the audience to know. Like, all right, guys, I'll do this one. I'll get the fuck out of your hair. Yeah. So when I did a gig at Baso with Chris Franklin, headlining.
Yep.
And he was not the corporate I was talking about, by the way. Okay. That wasn't for you, that was for them, because these fucking people try to tessellate information.
I'm going to solve it.
Everything's a fucking crime mystery podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So, Chris Franklin's there. Now, I did a gig with Julia Wilson in Queanbeyan, like within a few months of the Chris Franklin one. And I did a gig where Julia headlined at Baso like a year prior. So did a couple of gigs with Julia. Fucking high energy, great shit.
I think she hosted Raw Comedy in my first one.
Right. So that ties into this, because I'm in the back room at the base. So I've got Chris Franklin with me, and we're just shooting the shit. And he goes, I said to him, I've had some pretty good. He said, have you had any gigs lately? What have you been doing? He's chatting to me, super fucking relatable, like just shooting the shit.
Nice guy.
Just a good bloke. And he says to me, I said, I did a gig with Julia Wilson down at Queanbeyan a few months ago, and it was fucking wild. Like, it was great. That was one of the best compliments I've had as an MC. Julia Wilson came up to me and said at the end, you did good tonight. They were tough, like, to get. They were really rowdy. They were a good crowd, but they were on the drink heavy.
Yeah.
And that can go one of two ways, and MC plays a big part into how they shape that audience.
She would have been perfect for that gig.
Yeah, and also to get that compliment from her, knowing that I had to shape it up for her, because I knew she could handle it, but until she got on stage, I had to keep them all in order. Yeah. Then they could cut sick at the end. She says to me, you did good. They were a tough crowd, right? The main thing was removing a couple of big problems early on. Like you said, with the corporates, there was a side door where people were getting in and out instead of coming through the main area. That's been fixed now. The other thing was a few people that were just too drunk that needed to fuck off.
Yeah.
So I was telling Chris about that, and he says to me, he's just like, oh yeah, Julia Wilson. I was a judge in her Raw Heat.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, that's how long this cunt's been doing comedy for.
Oh, he's been, I think he was in Raw Comedy, but it was, 90s.
Yeah, so that's a fucking full circle back to Raw.
Yeah.
Yep, all right, we're going to take a break and we're back again in a moment. Please flip over the tape to side B to hear the rest of this podcast. Welcome back. This is the second part of the show. Now we've got if you're watching the video edition, we have headphones on, right? That means that we have a very specific audio bit that I prepped. This is probably the most prep I've put into a bit for this podcast.
I'm on it, mate.
It takes me back to when I did radio with you. We can talk about that after the bit, but now this is a bit that I like to call advice for Bill from Bill.
Okay.
So what happened was I often put out, like, I want people to write in questions. I've had a couple. I often will save them up and just do a whole episode on advice or whatever. My buddy Jack does those episodes where, for me, we call them Dr. Jackal and Marky Hyde, because he gives the cool, calm, collected advice, and I give the whole, like the most ludicrous fucking advice on how to handle it.
That checks out. Yep.
Now we're going to try and go for both sides in each person here, so we need to split our personalities, I guess. But what I'm going to do here is Because I don't have a lot of questions coming in, I'm going to use someone else's fame and fortune and podcasting success to feed into mine. So
Okay.
what we're going to do here is I listen to the Bill Burr podcast, the Monday morning podcast, and one of the questions in a recent episode within the last month actually came in from someone from Canberra.
Right.
So what I did is I have that as a sample, and we're going to, through the power of Bill Burr, our colleague, Bill, answer the question intended for his podcast.
Did he
Online.
answer it on his?
He did,
Okay.
but he answered it in about 10 minutes because he really goes deep on it.
Okay.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to act like a shorter version of that. We want to give like shorter than 10-minute response.
Yep.
So that we have our version. But if you want to hear the full constructed over 35 years of comedy experience,
Yep.
go to the Bill Burr.
So I like this
podcast.
study. Someone's asked a question. Bill Burr's answered it in depth, and you're like, well, why don't we give a shorter version from our...
Yeah, do you know why?
Why?
Because this person's from Canberra. Bill grew up in Boston and lives in LA.
Yep.
So if you want to hear the guy that grew up in Boston and did comedy in LA and all that stuff's version of the answer, go and hear it.
Knock
But if you
yourself
just
out.
want to hear two Aussie blokes,
I grew up in Canberra, mate, so I can give the Canberra version.
you can give the Canberra version.
Okay.
All right, so this is read by the man himself, Bill Burr.
Letting go. Hey, old Billy Greenshirt, writing from Canberra, the unknown capital of Australia. Probably even said it wrong. Need some advice. That's the capital of Australia? I would have guessed Sydney or Melbourne. Need some advice. All is well in my life, but one thing that kills me on a daily basis is not letting things go. Oh, yeah. Without going into details, I just struggle to forget old arguments or how I've acted in certain situations. I find myself reliving these arguments or situations to the point where these people are in my dreams. It kills me. How do you let shit go from your past? As always, go fuck yourself.
There you go. So
Well, my first
What's your
guess is that
advice?
Bill Burr is the exact right man for that, because I bet he doesn't let anything go. I hadn't heard his answer, but I reckon he holds on to arguments for a very long time. Is that what he said?
okay, so his full answer is great. I'll tell you his answer. So his answer was basically boiled it down to, I used to be like that. I try not to do that. I don't do that anymore.
Yep.
And one of the biggest thing is you need to talk it out and go to a therapist and talk about the problem instead of just holding on to it. And one of the biggest things he said that he does is he used to say that person's dead to me.
Yep.
Whenever he'd have an argument or a disagreement with them, like he would kill them mentally in his mind, as in he wouldn't talk to them anymore. However, he said the problem with that is when you do that, they live on within you and not as the person. So you're better off actually squashing it with them if you can, so that then you've put the argument to bed in person and you've resolved it. The other thing is find some hobbies. If your brain's not focused on that conversation that you had 10 years ago and you're focusing on something that's relevant and now that you're doing right now, then you're focusing on that instead of something that happened fucking years ago. Because chances are they're not still thinking about it, so you shouldn't either.
Yeah, well, that second bit is probably where I was heading towards, because I don't. I used to have that. I used to have it a little bit, but mostly kind of because I kind of liked the opposition and the opportunity. The conflict was, there was something exciting about a conflict, adrenaline and trying to defeat someone in an argument, particularly if they're wrong. Like if they've come from a negative position, and so you feel righteous. I love that kind of thing. And if you didn't get to do it at the time, it could play out in your mind. And if I ever got the chance to take it up again, this is what I do. But I don't do that anymore at all, because I just kind of outgrew the idea of getting that worked out about people, because most of the people that really bug you are actually insignificant in your own life most of the time. They've done something, you worked with them, or if it's family or friends, that they're a bit tough, but I'm pretty forgiving. And I think it comes from the idea that I'm hopeful that other people are as forgiving of me as I am of other people. I need a fair bit of people to, if I'm in their brains from something horrible I've done, I'm hoping they're forgiving me. So I've got to, I'm doing that. So I don't hold on to it. And I think you just got to, and I've never done that thing of they're dead to me.
Yeah.
I just lower the care. I go, okay, all right. I had this person at a certain level, potentially. Now they're just a lower level. I've demoted them from friend to acquaintance or whatever. No biggie. Acquaintances are fine. Recently, in the last few years, I had someone who did something really unfair over a long period, and I handled it really well, really calmly. But it bugs me that other people probably heard the other person's version and believed that is true, or believed it was a 50-50 halfway between what they'd heard and closer to mine, where in my mind it was zero. I hadn't done anything. But yeah, I was like, actually, this is really important to the other person. It's not even slightly important to me, other than it was wrong. Other than
you have a strong sense of justice.
Yeah, the theoretical thing. And I was like, actually, I don't care that much. I don't care about the justice element of it. And so once you let that go, then the actual real world effect of what they'd done wrong was nothing. And I just played on. It did take me a while to get there. So yeah, I think what you got to do is two things. Just consider the real world effect of whatever's gone wrong. Most of the time, it's nothing, and so you go, actually, I'm not giving any fuel, and the same with the individual. Go, is this person pivotal? If they're not, don't give it any fuel. If there's someone close to you and you need them, then probably address it, but address it without having to actually fix. I don't think you have to have the argument. I think you just go, how are we going to interact? How are we going to interact to make this not a negative thing?
I'll probably go the other way. I reckon stay toxic, make their wife love you. Don't have sex with her. You just want her to know that she wants you, and then choose not to.
Well, you are a player, mate.
No, I'm the game. No, just joking. So I would say, I would say a lot of what you said there. However, I'm going to go with a hybrid with Bill Burr's advice. Honestly, I find, for me, and it's taken me years to do this, I need to address it with the person then and there. Some people need time to process, and it sucks when I have to deal with someone that needs time to process, because I need it now.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that. But one thing, it depends. If the other person feels the same, like if they are agitated about it, that makes it far easier for me to not address it.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I'll soothe myself, and you can maintain the agitation.
Sure. Like. Yeah. True. So, I guess it depends on the personality type of the person you're dealing with. However, it might not need to be fully hashed out then and there, but I think that it at least needs to be addressed. My biggest thing is I will say to somebody, like, I don't agree with that, or like, I don't know how I feel about that, or I don't like that. And that at least I've got a foothold there, so that I've got a talking point to come back to if I do speak to that person again. So I can be like, I'm not ready to talk about this yet, but I don't think that that's right.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or
that's a good way of doing it.
Another one that I'll do is the whole talking about not what they've done, but how I feel. So instead of being like, you're an asshole, I'll be like, I don't know if you see it this way, but what you just did then makes me feel disrespected. And that's, at least, I know sometimes that's more confrontational, but if I just say to them, like, what you've just done there makes me feel disrespected, that means that they at least know how I feel about it. I'm not asking them to change their behavior. That's their choice.
Yeah.
But if I never speak to that person again, I've at least
They know
got
the
that off
impression
my
they
chest.
made. Yeah. Do you know what the other thing is? So I'm like, don't need negativity. So I actually don't have. It doesn't happen to me very often, and I think it's because stuff that annoys other people, I don't notice it. I don't really get offended. I don't really. People do annoying stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's in your life. It's
Within
not
them.
mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, actually, I think that one of the tips is see what you can do to not have those reactions. Not have them in the first place.
Yeah, true. That's good. I wish I could get to that point, but right now this is how I'm managing it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Sometimes you will, talking about different personality types. The last thing I need to mention on this, or would like to mention, see, I even just did it then. I corrected myself. It's like I don't need to, but I would like to. You also deal with different personality types, as in avoidance. People will be like, "Oh, dude, I don't care." They do care. They just don't want to deal with the conflict.
Yeah, true.
You'll get people that will try and trick you into changing your feelings. Hey, I feel disrespected about that. A response to that I've had is like, hey man, if you feel disrespected, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if
It's still your problem. You did it. Yeah.
if you are such a bitch that you felt disrespect from that. If that's the scenario, this world that we live in where you feel disrespected because you're weak, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Other than that, not my fucking problem.
Yeah, that's right.
That's actually fucking worse.
That's worse. And actually that did happen to me relatively recently, and someone almost used that exact things. I'm hearing that you're not happy, and and that agitated me for a bit, and then I was
It's like talking down to you. It's just like, what the fuck?
it was really patronizing, and then I was like, okay, so the way out of this is not to feel annoyed anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and then I started to find it comical that someone actually would say that to someone else in real life, an actual adult. I was like, okay, if you're kicking around saying stuff like that to people, then that's kind of funny.
Well, that's a good way to close it up. The bottom line is, if I say that I felt this way and that's how they react, at least I feel like, just back to what I was saying before, I got it off my chest. That person will go through their life dealing with conflict poorly and not benefiting either person from that. At least I've said my bit and it's done. And there's no beef after that.
Yeah, and you feel like you've done what you can.
Yeah, it's off my chest. The worst thing I can do is feel disrespected and not bring it up.
Yeah.
At least if I bring it up and then I'm disrespected further or gaslit into thinking that it wasn't that bad, then now I know it's on them and I can move on through life with no weight on my shoulders.
I'll give you my final thing on this is when I used to be a primary school teacher, right?
Yeah.
And you do lunchtime duty, kids are playing, and then they'll come up and dob on each other, and most of the time nothing's happened. And a veteran teacher told me once, what you need to say is, thanks for telling me. And so they come up and they go, Marky, you just called me a name. No, I didn't. And I go, thanks for telling me. And then they go, okay, they've said their thing, and then they leave, and you don't actually have to do anything. You don't have to get to the bottom of the story or whatever. And it was really effective. And because most of the time it's not anything, and they just need to have been heard. And I use that in real life. Either someone is annoyed about something, and I go, okay, cool, and I listen and let them say it, and then they're done. I don't resist, push back, disagree. Or if I do want to annoy them, when they get fired up, I'll actually say, oh, thanks for telling me. And that is the most irritating thing someone who's fired up can hear, particularly if I'm delivering it with absolutely no care in the world. So you can use it. You can use it for good, or you can use it for evil. That's my little gift.
Hell yeah. All right. Speaking good words. Look, it did take 15 minutes, but there's two of us. So I
wasn't ready for therapy.
Hey, dude, we got deep into that one. I appreciate you being able to do that on the spot.
And I'm very shallow, so that's a real uncomfortable.
You are a very surface level dude.
That's right. Just right here.
That's predominantly the reason for this. I wanted to learn more about what makes you tick. I wrote that question into Bill Burr so that we could get it to go full circle.
It's an elaborate thing. You could have just asked.
I did not, actually. So anyone that, if you happen to live in Canberra and you wrote that question into Bill Burr, I do actually want you to reach out, because I'd like to know that there's a fellow Canberran that also listens to the Bill Burr podcast, and I want you to come out to shows. Now, I've prepared a second bit,
Okay.
very bit heavy. That wasn't just the only thing I prepared. This bit is probably a lot more involved than the other one as far as prep goes, a lot less involved as far as your involvement.
Sounds good to me. That's my favourite balance of effort.
I started
You
with...
doing the work and me
yeah,
not.
I started, yep. So I have developed this new bit. It's probably the one and done for this bit because it is very difficult to find content for it without breaching copyright laws because a lot of the content for this is already published by media companies.
Yep.
And I can't really play it.
Well, I'm honoured that I'm getting the one and done.
So I have scoured the internet to find a few examples of this. I managed to put together a 3-round series.
Awesome.
It is a new bit that I like to call Whose Bit Is It Anyway? And what happens is I get 2 comedians side by side. They both have a similar bit. You listen to both of them. I don't tell you the name of the comedians or when they did the bit. You might be able to tell by the voices. Some of them are quite dominant voices.
Okay.
However, I won't actually tell you who they are. You tell me out of the 2 bits who you think, and they're mixed as well, not in they're a mixed order. You tell me who you think did that bit the best.
That's a great idea.
And then at the end, I announce the comedians and when they were said.
Cool. Okay, that sounds good. And I'd like to know if your listeners agree with what I think.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. So what I can do is in the on YouTube in the comment section of this, you tell me who you thought was the best for each round out of the 3 round. Okay. All right. Now I have one disclaimer for this. I've got a disclaimer later for the reveal, but before we get into it, one thing I'd like to say about the audio from this. Some of these I had to take them from like social media. So there's like random audio cues in there, like swoosh sounds or like whatever from like pop-ups that came up that the comedians have put in there. You know how like on Instagram Reels, they'll have like a picture that will like go over the reel to like sell the thing they're talking about.
We'll ignore any
do you remember
other
when
sounds.
Do you remember when comedy used to just be something that you would just say and wouldn't need picture to assist it?
Good old days.
Okay, so now it's literally one straight after the other. There's no gap between.
Okay.
So each round is just bit. You'll hear the voice change, but that's pretty quick.
I'm ready.
Okay. I forgot to mention the bleep bit is the word cum.
Gorilla mask, you in the face, right? And then take some pubic hair and throw it at her.
The Abraham Lincoln, that's where the guy trims his pubes on the girl's face and then throws the pubes so she has that facial hair.
That is the worst thing I've ever heard. Second one's Sarah Silverman, I would say.
You would say, yep.
Abraham Lincoln is better. That's a funnier.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. I'm going to move on to round 2 while we're in the mindset. I'll do the reveal after. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Second round. Yeah, also, it's you can't get that time back again. So from one comedian to the other, enjoy that bit just playing over and over. Fuck. What a rough bit out of context.
That is so horrible. It's a horrible joke.
It feels kind of like it could be a street joke that's just been adapted into a comedy set.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not even a joke. To me, that isn't a joke yet. There's got to be a punchline. Why have you told us that?
Yeah, true. So out of context, but we're just talking about that bit.
That little bit.
Do you agree that they were quite similar though?
Same thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right, round 2.
Here's this new thing. I don't know if you guys heard this. He wants to build a new wall all down the California-Mexico border. Like a 12-foot high brick wall. It's like 3 feet deep. So no Mexicans get in. But I'm like, dude, Arnold, who do you think is going to build that wall?
I propose that we kick all the illegal aliens out of this country. Then we build a super fence so they can't get back in. And I went, who's going to build it?
Yeah, same joke. And I have heard that before, and it might not have even been either of those two. I actually don't think either of them nailed it. I think that, you know, that's... it's not a great insight. It's a good one. And if that were me, I'd want the next bit of the joke to be the funny bit. It's still pretty good, though. I think both of them almost sound like they're retelling someone else's joke that they heard and not quite getting the words right.
Neither of them you think are original.
No. I just think the structure of their joke
sounds like
enough.
it's not original.
Yeah. They should have worded it better to get it tighter and to do the misdirection better. It sort of sounds like how someone would say in conversation rather than stand up. I think probably, I don't know, I almost have to listen to it again, but I'm probably leaning to the first because he talked about the wall and he was just a bit more succinct in the way he set it up. The other one, the super high fence, it was a bit sloppy.
Yep. Okay. There's a bit more context to that at the end, which I'll reveal when I do the setup.
Okay.
But good vote. All right. Now for the third and final. And honestly, if you, I'd be surprised if you didn't get the voice from this one. So that may sway your answer. Okay. But
no, I'll disassociate the comedian with the joke. If
and
the
just
joke
look
is
at
better
it.
of the other person,
Sure. Alrighty. And finally, round number 3, final round.
The very thought of 53 fucking virgins is a nightmare. It's not a fucking present, it's not a prize. It's a punishment. Give me 2 fire-breathing whores any day of the week. I'm a slut man.
If you're Muslim and you die for your faith, which is the highest honor, in paradise you're rewarded with 72 virgins. I'd be like the only guy in Muslim heaven that's like, excuse me, can I trade my 72 virgins for 2 whores?
So Billy Connolly. I've heard this joke told by other people. Actually better. I heard it once actually in Canberra at what was called ICBM, which is now about where Verity Lane is. Wasn't a great comedy room, but I can't remember who told it. But they told it better than that.
Better than the first.
Both of them. Better than both. Billy Connolly does it better in that because his delivery, and part of it is having a great voice, and but he puts more mustard on it. He puts more emotion into the thing, whereas the other guy sort of let the words do all the heavy lifting, and I just prefer that style. And I'm not a massive Billy Connolly fan. Like obviously he's a huge icon of the art form.
Colleague of ours, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But not one of my favourites by any stretch.
Yep.
And actually sometimes I think he's just delivery and without the jokes, which or just reputation without the jokes. But I think he did that better.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, now it's time I'll reveal the answers. Some of them you guessed. So now the disclaimer before the reveal. I only have the dates of that I could find for the earliest that this was published. So not necessarily told.
Yeah.
Okay. Round 1. The first one was Patrice O'Neill.
Okay.
The second one was Amy Schumer.
Yeah.
I don't have dates.
Oh, Schumer. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have dates for that. However, Amy Schumer performed that bit after his death, Patrice O'Neill's death.
Okay.
So that's a pretty good line in the sand there. Second round. Now, this one's got a bit more context, and I actually have the dates.
Yep. So this is the wall.
The
Trump
wall.
Yep.
Now, coinciding with the dates, it's not the Trump wall.
Oh.
It's actually Arnie said the same thing.
Oh, right.
So not only the bit might be stolen, the context is now being stolen again by a different politician. It was originally, earliest finding of it was Ari Shaffir, 2004.
Okay.
Controversial, second time it was said, is 2006 by Carlos Mencia.
Yeah. But you know what? Sometimes a joke can be thought of by 2 different people totally independently. And in the Trump wall, I think anyone, you don't even have to be American, like Australian will come up with that. Mexicans do all the labor and the tough jobs.
Yeah.
And in America, in that part of the world, I would expect 100 people. And there would be people going, oh, damn, I was going to do that.
It's not just that it's like might be stolen, it's that the whole bit is something that not just a comedian, anyone could probably think
That's
of.
right. So I suspect there's 50 other people who have
Probably
recording.
a bunch of other politicians also thinking the same thing. They just didn't say it on a podium, so it wasn't their bit.
And the thing, that's true. And the thing is, it's a racial stereotype joke. And as we know from racist jokes that are horrible pub ones that you would hear, they only work because you know what the stereotype is.
Yeah.
And so that's actually, people talk about racist jokes that you might hear at the pub or your granddad might tell. They're not funny because they punch down and they, they make fun of a disadvantaged group. But also they're not funny from a comedy perspective because they're predictable. If I say an Asian's driving a car, you know where I'm headed towards. If I say whatever. So that predictability makes it a bad joke as well as the bigotry involved. So, and that's why sometimes, people still tell me it's racist stuff sometimes. I'm like, well, even if I didn't disagree from a racist perspective, it's not funny. I'm not saying it's not just funny from the racist perspective. I'm saying it's not funny from a comedy perspective. And actually, to a racist joke teller, that has more impact than saying I don't agree with you on the race perspective.
It's just not funny as a joke.
Yeah. From a craft perspective, it's not well constructed.
For sure. I agree with you on that. It's just not funny for everyone. So if you tell someone that thinks a racist joke's funny, that it's racist, they'll be like, yeah, but it's a joke. It's just like, if you tell them that it's not funny, now you're saying it's not even a joke.
Exactly. Undercut that, pull the rug out. And it's a bit like that conversation before about argument. If you have an argument with someone, if you push against them, they'll push back. If you tell them it's not an argument, they've got nothing to do with it.
Excellent. Now, finally, the third round. The first example, as you picked, Billy Connolly, 2006.
If I didn't get that one, I'd have to leave.
Hand in your fucking drink ticket.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the comedy version of a badge. Valid for the day of the gig, so it's already...
That's right.
Ever got the drink ticket at the end of the gig? It's expired because the bar's shut.
Yeah. You got to use those quick.
Yeah, you get in there early. I got a drink ticket story I'll tell you after this, but... and the second one is by a comedian, currently a big social media following, called Jeff Dye. He posted that in last year, 2024.
Never heard of him. Last year?
Yeah.
That is so... Well, what'd you say? Billy Connolly was 2006? That's around the time I probably would have heard it from the other person who I can't think of. Maybe 2008, 9.
Yeah, so...
if you're doing that last year... then you are so off because that's the the Muslim. The reason those jokes started to become prominent is as people started paying more attention
it's
to
up to
Islam.
120 virgins now because of inflation. So
yeah, that's right. But 9/11 brought that controversy to US, who probably never turned their attention to religions other than the ones that are predominant in their country.
Yeah.
And so it was a flow on from that, because it's linked to terrorism and, so to do it in 2024, so he told it worse and he told it way too late.
Yeah. And also even 06 was a bit after.
Yeah, 06, that's okay, and.
Well, the thing is, it was published in 06.
That's right.
Billy Connolly may have done that joke way before then.
Exactly right. Yeah.
But like I said, I've only got earliest published.
But often highest profile wins as well. Like
Robin Williams, there's a lot of stories of him
sure.
stealing jokes, and it's spoken about very big. I've got a podcasting colleague, Joe Rogan, and he had a whole.
Yeah.
I needed a pause after that so people didn't think I was being serious, and so. He did a whole bit about, on his podcast that I found when I was researching this, because I was trying to find a Robin Williams bit that was copied.
Yeah. But he'd probably take it from a support act at a club.
So here's the controversial part about the Ari Shaffir one. in that time, like in 2004, Ari Shaffir was opening for Carlos Mencia. And it was just before Joe Rogan called him out for stealing his bit.
Yeah.
So, that was very topical for that. So that's why that came up. But there's stories of there's this fucking story I seen on a podcast called We Might Be Drunk with Mark Norman. And he was saying that there was a guest on there that hosted for a gig, and Robin Williams was on the gig, and Ray Romano was on stage, right, doing a bit. Robin Williams was in the wing about to get up. Ray Romano gets off stage. Robin Williams comes up and then did a joke that Ray Romano just did.
Wow.
And it didn't do badly.
Yeah. Wow.
On That's the same one after the other. How wild's that? But here's the thing. The host was saying that there was actually a bit of, like, the crowd thought that it was a bit that he was doing the bit. Yeah. So maybe that had some sway. But yeah.
That's Robin Williams. You know, here's the thing. I did a joke in 2007 and I did it for quite a long time. I don't do it anymore. It's a bit hacky, I feel. Jay Sullivan, who we mentioned earlier, a mate of mine, comedian, he sent me a video in about 2015, like 7 or 8 years later, of Bill Cosby doing the exact same joke. And it's not like a topical from the news joke like that. Yeah. It is really quite a random idea. And it doesn't he structures it pretty similar.
Right.
And he's like, Bill Cosby ripped off your joke. And I'm like, that is ridiculous because I've never performed with him or whatever. But I had told it lots of times, and I had lots of people ask me, can they tell it at different events and reuse it? And I think to myself, is it possible that it could have been talked about, passed on verbally, and then someone's heard it? You know, Bill Cosby probably has writers or whatever, and someone's thrown it out there and he's put his own spin on it.
Sure.
Is that possible over 7 or 8 years?
Yeah,
because there's... Yeah.
Potentially. If it's all in the same comedy circles, I mean...
You never know. Or we just had the exact same idea about the exact same thing.
Yeah.
In which case, I mean, Bill Cosby, horrible person, very good comedian. That's kind of cool in that sense.
Yeah, the rate you drink fucking water, I wouldn't be hanging out with Bill Cosby, mate.
It's horrible when someone's craft and art is good and they're just a horrendous person and you're like, you've just ruined it, mate.
And it
happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, I have opened for you before, so
I said craft was good.
Yeah. Just like a true opener, I set you up to get the laugh.
Thank you, mate.
So what gets me about that is I seen Eddie Murphy's Raw and Delirious. At the same time, he speaks about that in that set. How after his first special, Bill was just like, you can't be fucking talking. Well, he didn't say fucking. He did his own. You can't be talking about, that. Meanwhile, he was fucking roofing chicks.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's the matter? The fucking, like, clean as a whistle comedian's actually a monster behind closed doors. Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
I don't know why the fuck, I reckon if someone is openly that, like, trying to shut down comedy or whatever, they need to investigate that fucking person.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of the biggest police are perpetrating the worst.
Yeah,
the worst acts,
I've done clean sets before because I've had to. Well, I've done like corporate with you. I've done outdoor gigs with kids in the crowd, whatever. Like they're all atrocious, but you got to try and do it. Like, I remember I did one and I locked eyes with a child that was in the crowd and I was just like, when I knew this punchline had a swear word in it, and I just said it without the swear word and it bombed.
Yeah. So, I mean, swearing is, people use it too liberally and sometimes even I do it too often, but put in the right sentence that's already funny, it can be a little bit of an accelerant or add a bit of emotion that does make the joke. So people say swearing's not funny. Sometimes it is funny if used well.
I've done it with gigs where I actually think sometimes I toned it down because I've seen, someone brought Nonna out for the night and I lock eyes with an 86-year-old lady and I'm like, I won't do that bit, or I won't say it that way. And sometimes it will be better without the swearing.
Yeah, that's right.
So it goes both
that's
ways. True. Alrighty, so we're chatting about drink tickets before. So my drink ticket story is, I went and did a spot at Civic Pub. First time I ever did comedy with you and seen you. I remember I walked up the stairs there. It was like an institution for people that started around the same time as me.
Yeah.
Even before me, it was like the spot to get a spot. And I'm walking up the stairs, and I think you MC'd maybe, or you're just on after the break. I don't remember, but it was after the break. You go upstairs, and you had a Coke, a beer, and a water. And you were just juggling between which ones, like if you needed to like hydrate, whatever. And I just remember thinking like this, no wonder this guy's so like, everything about you just seemed extra, because it was just like, I need to fucking have like, I need like a beer. I think water, I'm feeling dehydrated. It just seemed like super manic, but then it just was because you're in show mode, you're high energy. But then, it all made sense, like it made sense.
It is an odd thing. I drink heaps of water. Like people try to drink water.
Yeah.
I can't not.
Yeah.
I'm compulsive with it. And I think sometimes, is something wrong with me? So that always happens. I was at a pub, so I usually have a beer.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, I just like, when you're talking a lot, sometimes a sweet drink. I don't drink soft drink usually. It's too sweet for me. But at a gig, so every now and then I'm like, I feel like a Coke.
Yeah.
And
also, you don't want to just be smashing beers, right? If you got to perform, you got to kind of be a bit.
I often don't drink before a gig. Like sometimes, because it's a job, and so I'm like, I don't need it, and I don't have to do it. But at the other times, I'm like, well, also one beer is not going to shift the dial too much, and
sure.
And sometimes also I'm like, well, I don't want to change what
to wet the whistle,
yeah, I don't want to change what I'd normally do for a gig. You're like, that is a way of actually showing nerves anyway. I better not. So yeah, but having 3 drinks is a bit wacko.
The audience can sniff weakness.
Yeah, they can. But it is something I do all the time. But I'll have a coffee, and I'll be still drinking the coffee, thinking about having a second coffee. I'm like, mate, you've got one. Just have this one and
you parent yourself like that?
Pardon?
You parent yourself like that?
Parent?
Yeah, you're like, mate, you've already got one.
Yeah. There's a lot of internal monologue that I don't, and
externalize there.
Yeah, I just try not to externalize it, and then keep a facade of relative mental stability.
Yeah, when meanwhile you're still just beating yourself up about a fucking argument for 15 years ago.
Yeah, no.
No, but anyway, after that though, because I'm just sitting there on like side of stage, I'm going to get up within the next couple comedians, and you said to me, you're like, have some water. Like literally, you don't realize it, but like that is a like good bit of advice. And even now, like I'll sometimes be like running around trying to like run a gig or whatever, and I'll still have that like have some water, because it just severely fucking impacts. Like when you get on stage, just the difference between like having some water before you went up and none by the end of your set could mean the difference between drying fucking out or actually being all right.
Well, one thing, and this is part of a broader concept that a lot of comedians don't think about when they're new, and sometimes at all. Sometimes they think it's just the jokes, the things you've written, and that is only one component. And there are so many ways to derail your joke for an audience, and anything that takes them away from it knocks you down. So if you've got a bit of a dry mouth, even if they haven't clocked in that you do, they'll hear it subconsciously, takes away. If you move in a weird way, you stand in a weird way, you're not quite in the light, you move the microphone but it's still in front of you. All those things, just a little 1%, 2% detracting from your set. So, and they're easy to fix, most of them.
Yeah.
And you just got to be a bit aware.
Yeah, you did MC that night. Because I remember now, you were on stage doing a bit about, I'm not going to do the bit, but it's a bit about, let's just say people with beards that ride motorbikes.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do that joke for very long, yep.
And the best part about it was, I was in the crowd for the first half. I'm getting up in the second half. everyone within a 1 seat diameter of me wasn't watching you do the bit. They were watching me to see how I reacted to the bit.
Yep.
And I've never told you that. That's so funny, though, because they weren't listening. They were getting approval from me as to whether they should laugh at that or not.
Yeah, is this guy going to get shot from the fourth row?
Yeah, from the fourth row. The other thing about free drinks, and this is the actual point, is so I still have my drink ticket from the first ever. That's the first time I ever got paid for comedy, was in the form of a drink ticket.
Yeah, okay.
So I keep that in like a fucking jar of shit, right? Like I've got like the first couple drink tickets plus like I think like maybe I got a couple of random things like just collectible crap from over the years. Like my first ticket for my comedy show, whatever, all that crap.
Nice.
So I often wouldn't. If I only got one drink ticket, I would end up buying a drink if I wanted one and keep the ticket.
That's funny.
Fucking, yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah. It says Civic Pub and shit, like Comedy Club, Canberra Comedy Club or whatever. It's insane to have the foresight to think that this might be something that I would have wished that I kept, to have that foresight in the present, to look back at the present moment. There's something else wrong with me. But I get up to the bar and someone's on stage, you want to be quiet, right? And this wasn't on that night. It was like one later, and I'm trying to keep my drink ticket, right? I got like my first 3.
Okay.
Benny Egmalese is in the line in front of me, and he hands over the drink ticket, and she gives him a tall glass with a slice of lime in it. And I was thinking to myself, like, he just fucking spent his drink ticket on a soda water.
Yeah.
And I was only going to buy soda with lime because I'm paying for it instead of using my drink ticket.
Yep.
So he leans over when he gets it and he goes, no, like that. And then I can't hear what he's saying because he's keeping his voice down. And she goes, oh, okay. And then hands him a short glass and gives it to him. And he walks off with that. And I, being a bartender, just walk up and I say, oh, if this is going to get thrown out, I'll just take this one, this like miss pour. And she goes, yeah, okay. And just hands it to me. I'm like, sweet. Take a sip and it's like rocket fuel. I was like, what the fuck is this? This isn't soda water. So I walk up to Benny and I was just like, what did you order, bro? Is this like a fucking gin and tonic or something? And he goes, yeah, bruz, triple.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, fuck.
A triple.
And you wanted it in a short glass?
Yeah.
There would have been like 3 nips of drink and 1 nip of tonic.
Yeah, no. Oh,
and he looks at me and he just goes, yeah, bruz, I don't fuck around.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's a funny dude, Benny.
Dude, and I fucking... So here's the thing. Out of respect, I drank it.
You kind of
but I drove to the gig, so I had to stay there till 10:30.
Tuesday the next week.
Yeah. To be able to get home.
Well, I'll tell you, you're talking about tickets. You owe me some acknowledgement here because I was the catalyst for ticketed drinks in Canberra comedy. It's one of my few contributions to the comedy scene. And I'm going to tell it because I know that if certain people who run Comedy ACT hear this podcast, this is what they'll think about.
If they're going to listen to any, it will be this one.
Yep. So some guys who set up all the original rooms, still do the good rooms, heavily involved in the Canberra Comedy Festival. So the way it used to work is comedians would get the free drinks, but what you just do is they had a list of the comedians' names at the bar, and they go, Marky, and you got 2 drinks at that point, and they go, tick, Marky's had his first one, tick, Marky's had the second one, you come up again, you have to pay for it. So just had a list. No tickets involved. So one night I was on and I didn't drive and I must have been on early in the show and heaps of comedians don't drink. And so I'm like, well, who's going to get their 2 drinks? So then I was just going up and I was going, oh yeah. So I had mine. I was like, I'll get Marky's because he doesn't drink. And then I'll get so-and-so's. And so I just went through the list of the free drinks. However, I must have made a mistake about who or who wasn't claiming their drinks or whatever.
Did you drink what they would normally drink? You're like, oh, no. Just out of respect, I'll have a burn.
I don't have respect like that, okay. Marky. That's a you thing. Anyway, I must have gone well. I must have exceeded the total allocation for the whole show, because later one of the organisers called me, and he's like, "We've got a bit of a problem. The venue's not happy." I was like, "With what?" And they got the drinks. I was like, "I was just taking the freebies that were allocated to the comedians. Otherwise, as a group, we're down. So if anything, I'm helping the group by, taking the allotted number of drinks." And they're like, "No, you went way over." And the venue was so dirty that I had to, next time I performed there, I had to acknowledge it on stage that I had, and I made a joke out of it. And so from that point on, they introduced tickets to make sure that it couldn't go over the list. And I may have had a connection to, I think I was friendly with one of the bartenders or both bartenders, and I manipulated the system. Anyway, I got in a lot of trouble for that.
Dude, what year was that?
Oh, I don't have a clue. Civic Pub opened in 2012. Would have been the first couple of years, I would say.
Within the first couple of years. Now, I am pulling up I've got some receipts here for this. I did a gig with you at Gang Gang in November, and Nick Schuler was headlining, you were emceeing.
Good gig. Gang Gang's great room.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring this up, since you, you emceed the conversation as well. We were given, I think we've got a venue provides a meal and a drink for performers.
Yep.
And
it's good food as well. It's usually a curry. I love it. I go just for the curry.
It does. I say that as well. The venue runner there, Chris, is really good at information. He said usually curry, veggie, or meat option. Oh, there's a full message there. I was just pulling out the highlights. But so you've replied to that and said, is this
in a group chat?
Yeah, this is in the group chat. Yeah, so you've actually replied to that. So let it be known the lineup is like you, Laura Johnson, me, Sarah Ison, Marty Bryant, and Nick Schuler.
Mm-hmm.
So you've replied to that saying, I just need Laura's complimentary drink.
Yeah, so unpredictable.
So, yep. So I just like to say that no matter how long ago that happened, it still happens up until November 2024.
They will be. If they ever institute tickets at Gang Gang, then you'll know why. Well, it's just, I don't think the man should profit at the expense of the artist. So if Laura's not going to have any, who's going to support Laura?
Now,
me. I am that hero.
I just want to know, so Laura had to pull out of that gig because she was unwell. Was that a ploy to get her drink? Did you somehow sabotage?
Well, no, because I need her there to be the person who gets a drink that doesn't take it.
Oh, right.
So, if a replacement comes in, they might drink their allocated, beer. So I can't have that risk. So no.
Yeah, true. You want more people to come along.
We need more Laura Johnstons in the world. Good.
Yep. Shout out to Laura Johnston, the roast champion of 2023.
Yeah.
Yep.
Surprise package.
Hey, speaking of gigs, we've got a couple gigs coming up. You've got some shows. Where can people go and see you do comedy?
I got a gig at the Top Pub in Queanbeyan. I think it's the 22nd of February. That's a pretty cool room. And I'm headlining there. And then the Canberra Comedy Festival, 14th and 15th of March, at the Fun Time Pony. They'll be really good gigs. So I love that room. So there's lots of others in and around that, but they're probably the two big ones in the next couple of months.
Cool. Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. For all my stuff, if you listen to this podcast, you already know where my shit is, but my website, markycomedy.com, has all the gigs, all the open mics. I'm making it so that, currently it's set up so that comedians can even sign up for spots there. It's all becoming fairly automated. So the best thing you can do to support comedy and support me is to go onto my website, sign up to my mailing list. And that's everything else is from there.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, mate.
Cool. Thanks for being on the show.
Don't buy me a drink. Just name names.
Yeah, right.
Big time. Look at fucking thrown out
the strip club with your floppy disk. Yeah, you got a big beard, dude.
Shame for shit all day.
Me and my best friend, Marky Worthington.
Keep it simple. Count the money.
That they're not proud of.
Just give me $10.
Hey, right.
Click.
Did you hang up?
No, I just said click.